Good afternoon, good day, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Black Emotional Mental Health Collective, holding a public conversation on Black mental health and AI. I am your host and your facilitator of the conversation. My name is Yolo Akili Robinson. Pronouns are he and they. And I get the opportunity to hold space for this really powerful dialogue, which might feel part, you know, brunch, Sunday brunch with your people talking tea, which who also are scientists and psychologists and professors. You're gonna feel a little bit of that vibe. It's gonna give you both of those. But at the same time, we plan to really explore difficult questions, some of which we won't have the answers to, some of which we have some insight to, right? But the intention behind today is at its core is that we know that this thing we call AI is interfacing with Black mental health from AI chatbots being created to mimic Black women therapists. We know that AI is also impacting our environment because we're seeing the development of centers in low income and working class Black communities where there are repercussions. And there is a lot of misinformation going on all over the internet,
Mm.
right? And so this our hope today with this conversation is to really get to some truths, some core realities, and also sit with some uneasy things that we don't know. All right. Give you some context for those of you who are never been to a Beam event. First of all, where have you been? Why are you? What's going on? Why you ain't been here yet? What's going on? But Beam stands for the Black Emotional and Mental Health Collective. We are an international organization, quite frankly, that trains, funds, and resources an ecosystem of healing justice, disability justice, Black folks doing dynamic grassroots healing work. We have a three-part point to our model. It's real simple. I'm gonna break it down to you. First part is train. We do about 60 plus trainings a year, private and public, across the world, because we believe that when our folks have more skills to be able to hold not only mental health crises, but hold care, have new tools to reframe and reimagine how they think about their masculinity or their gender or their mental health, we know that we have healthier villages. We have more powerful and dynamic villages when the community at large is trained. Second part of our work is resource. Yes, we are a funder. We support a network of grassroots organizations across the United States, South Africa, and on the island of Haiti, really to make sure that like the work that's holding down the underground wellness network, the therapist who's in the church who's holding groups because with very little money, the folks who are offering herbal medicine to folks and don't have the big resources, the big corporations, are supporting mothers who have lost children. All those pieces matter, and that's where our resources go. And then last but not least, Restore, we hold healing spaces and conversations, much like what you are in today. But those healing spaces happen in Atlanta monthly, bi-monthly, as well as Los Angeles bi-monthly and virtually. So that's a little bit about our work. We will put links in the chat and also an email so you can learn more about that. But you didn't come here to hear about all that. You came to meet our dynamic panelists and see and learn something, right? Um, so let me first just offer you, before we even jump in, a moment to pause, right? There is a lot going on in the world. There, not only are we seeing the rise of fascism, but I always remind people we are seeing the rise of indigenous healing, Afro-Indigenous healing, transformation, and a coalescing of our capacity to organize. But all that creates a lot of tension, a lot of things. So I'm going to invite you into what we call a sacred pause moment. It is a consent-based practice. That means I might invite you and you might be like, I don't know who all over there, girl. I'm not coming over there, but stay blessed. I'm gonna stay off my camera. Do what you need to do, right? But it's an invitation. And it's an invitation to take a breath before we go into this dialogue. So wherever you are, I just want to invite you to take a moment to try to create some spaciousness in your body, some groundedness in your body, whatever that feels and looks like for you. For me and my body, I'm trying to lower my shoulders. I am resting my hands on my thighs. For you and your body, that might be very different. Honor your body's unique abilities and find spaciousness and groundedness in your body wherever you are. And just want to invite you to take a moment to bring your awareness to you. How does your energy feel right now in this moment? Maybe you become aware of your energy by noticing the air around you, Maybe you're smelling a scent in your home or the space you're in, feeling your heartbeat slowly through your chest. Maybe your feet on the ground, just inviting you to come into your body and into yourself a little bit more into the present. And as you feel those thoughts start to come through your mind, I want to invite you to take one deep inhale through your nose and exhale. Let what came before roll off of you. Let thinking about what's coming next roll off of you and just try to ease into right now. What do you feel right now in your body? You might feel a little gassy. If it's like you're like me, I had a busy eating earlier. You feel that? Honor that. Let it be. Let it be. You might be feeling a little tension. But whatever it is, bring your awareness to it and just call yourself to ground. And then if you like, we can just do 3 simple closing breaths. And the way I invite you, you can do these at your own pace. But what I want to encourage you is that when we exhale, I want you to feel like you can make all the noise you want. In fact, what I like to do is I like to get my Megan Thee Stallion on. So I'm gonna go, I'm gonna put my tongue out and I'm gonna push out all the air. So I want to invite you. You can join with me or you can do it at your own pace. We're gonna do 3 breaths. Inhaling deeply through our nose and exhaling through our mouth and being as loud as we want to, just letting all the stuff we want to release go. So 1, 2, 3, inhale. Feel that. Shake your shoulders if you feel that, or just let that flow through you. And then one more time, 2 more times, I'm sorry. Inhale deeply. Exhale. And last but not least, exhaling anything you want to let go of. If it's that ex that trying to text you, exhale him. If it's that thing that you need to let go, whatever it is, we're gonna exhale it. All right. 1, 2, 3, inhale. Hmm. Maybe just sit with that and see how that feels for you if you chose to take those breaths. Sometimes we are not breathing deeply. We're rushing and moving to the next, to the next thing, and not being attentive to this body that our folks have fought so hard for us to have the right to be in. Not being attentive to allowing air and spirit to move thoughtfully. And so that breath can be a way we can do that. For those of you who chose to participate in that quick breath pause, thank you for joining. Please feel free to share how that felt for you. For those of you who chose not to engage in that, who was like, I don't even know them people, I don't know what's not potato salad, I ain't doing it. Thank you for honoring what felt in alignment with your spirit, because that's what's most important, right? That you do what feels good for you. So if it didn't feel good to breathe and you were like, it didn't feel good and you didn't do it, good, because that means you were in consent with you, and that's what matters most. All right, we don't have a little breathing. Now we can move into the core of our conversation. Y'all, we got some baddies on the core, okay? We got some dynamic, brilliant, powerful minds to have this dialogue together today. I'm going to say a little bit about them individually, but of course, there's so much more. They have manuscripts and libraries of wisdom and bios that we could share about their backgrounds, right? But I want to lift them up and welcome them into the room. I'm going to start with Dr. Alfie. Dr. Alfie, how can we even begin to introduce Dr. Alfie? I would say that Dr. Alfie first is a psychologist and a scientist. And also, I would say this too, everyone you come across who has met Dr. Alfie, love them some Dr. Alfie. Okay, like Dr. Alfie is united. has been, in many ways, in my experience in Black mental health, a uniting force across all the different perspectives people have in mental health and Black mental health, because we are all not politically the same. We all sit in different places. But Dr. Alfie has always been a warm champion. I can say that when I was first started doing this work and I was doing research on things like colorism and the mental health of Black women and girls, Dr. Alfie Brilliant Noble's name was on papers everywhere. And I was like, wait a second, who is this person before I met her? She had been laying down the foundation long before this moment about mental health became a trend. She has been holding it down. And she also has been leading the way, supporting organizations with the Maddie Fund, which we are grateful to say that we are a recipient of. So she's been moving economic resources to Black and Brown and marginalized communities. And so there's so much more I can say, but I would just say it is an honor to have you here, Dr. Alfie. You have been a
I
champion
say,
for our folk for forever, and I'm so grateful to have you here. Welcome.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me here. All right, next we have now Dr. Jessica Jackson is new to me, but let me tell you, everybody I talk to saying like, no, JJ, Jessica been in the streets, like like it's new to you. You need to catch up. And so everybody
Wait a minute now, not the streets, not the
not
streets. Academic,
mental health
Them
streets,
academic
mental health
streets.
streets,
It's the
mental
academic
health
academic
streets,
streets.
streets.
yes.
There you go. The academic streets.
Academic streets, right? So
There you
Dr.
go.
So Dr. Jessica Jackson, of course, is a licensed psychologist and also the founder and CEO of Therapy is for Everyone, right? And in addition to that work that she does in that capacity as a speaker and leading curriculum development and ideas, she also is the past chair of the APA's Mental Health Technology Advisory Committee and was an appointed member of the FDA's inaugural Digital Health Advisory Committee, right? So Dr. Jackson coming in here like, yeah, I know these digital AI streets, excuse me, mental health streets, okay? She's bringing that expertise and insight and knowledge to this conversation from all of her research and her advocacy. And so we're so excited to have you here, Dr. Jessica. I can tell you that when I did mention your name to people everywhere, I dropped your name, people like, oh yeah, no, yeah, you need to talk to her because she needs somebody you need to say about this. She got things to say. So we're grateful to have you here. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
Last but not least, and I'm a little bit biased on this person, I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little biased. I have some unconscious bias. Is Dr. Moya Bailey. Dr. Moya Bailey is many things. First of all, a professor at Northwestern University and a founder of the Digital Apothecary and co-founder of Black Feminist Health Science Studies Collective. But in addition to that, she's also my bestie. So I'm like, that's I'm like in my arrogance, I'm like, this is more important. My best, no, it's actually more important her work. She is also the author of Massage Noir and is the creator of that term, Massage Noir. So if you have heard people talk about the intersection of Black women's experience with racism and sexism, it was Dr. Moya's research and work and the naming of that has created an opportunity to like really shed light on that intersection and how we can continue to fight for the liberation of Black women everywhere. And so I'm thrilled to have Dr. Moya here. Dr. Bailey has also done a lot of work at the intersection of digital humanities. And so she brings a unique Black feminist perspective that's rooted in research, but also practice to this conversation. And so please welcome Dr. Moya Bailey.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yay. Last but not least, I'll acknowledge that we have Sean Lewis on tech support. So if you have questions, Sean is right here with the Beam team. We also have Dr. Amanda Poole, who was in here just to offer any support that you need, technology. You know, it's a conversation about AI. That don't mean we know what we're doing with the tech. We're going to work it out for you, okay? So that is that. So welcome. Let's get started. So first of all, I'd like to start off with like, where are you at? What's coming? Where are you at? Top of mind, top of heart, right? Because we're talking about healing and wellness, so we're not going to jump in without checking in on you. And so I would love to open up the floor with just checking in. Where are you at? Top of mind, top of heart. Maybe with this conversation, maybe with something else you would like to share. But I'm going to offer it first to Dr. Jessica Jackson. Dr. Jessica, where are you at right now? What's on your heart in this moment?
Oh, such a deep question. Don't know if we have time for everything that's on my heart and mind today. But I think my heart is probably with a lot of the folks globally. And just thinking about there's a lot of conflict that is happening, a lot of folks who are impacted by that. And I think that is probably what is most heavy on my heart is just thinking about not only just thinking about them, because I do believe that action is always needed, but thinking about ways that I can be supportive from the space that I am. I'm based in Houston, so based where I'm in Houston. Um, I think that's what's on my heart today, is thinking about all those folks and what I could be doing differently to better support folks globally.
Ashe, Ashe, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Bailey, where are you at today? What's top of mind, top of heart for you?
I just want to say I'm really grateful for this container. I love how Beam moves, and it just feels really nice to be in a space to have this kind of conversation, especially now as people are trying to figure out how to hold all of the things that are going on in the world, figuring out the best way or even some better ways, if not best, ways to address our feelings in this moment feels right on time and really happy to be part of the conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. Dr. Alfie, where are you at today? Coming up for you.
I'm in a good space. I'm a good heart space, even with all the chaos. The last couple of weeks, it has not been. My nervous system has been just kind of wrecked. But it's been like that for a year since January of last year, and or November of 2024. But we ain't gonna go there. And I think I've worked very hard to try to always come back to center. And that's been a challenge, is trying to get back to center with so much chaos going around. As Dr. Jessica and Dr. Moria said earlier, it's carrying all of that stuff. And then also it's on my heart is I finished a book, and the book was 10 years in the making. It comes out May 12th, and the book is called Rise and Thrive. That has been grounding me. The number of times I meditate daily. I've been doing it for 20 years. Dr. Jessica knows this. For 20 years, every morning I sit down, and many mornings I'm sitting down with my book because of the exercises in there. And it just helps me to feel grounded, and it helps me to come back to center. And I get emotional thinking about it. The fact that all those things are intersecting, the whole history, all the work I've done, putting it in a book that I've been working on off and on for about 10 years, and being able to use that book to help me help myself. That's a
Mm,
gift. And I don't know that it could have happened for me in a different timeline if I had stayed on the path that I was on. So I'm also grateful for following God. And God said, no, baby, this way. And I said,
mm,
okay, let me just go that way. So I'm holding all of that in deep gratitude. And that's where my heart is today.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Alfie. Particularly, congratulations again on your new book, Rise and Thrive. And also, thank all of you, but thank you, Dr. Alfie, for making more tools for our folks that we need in this time, right? As we see what's happening in the world, as we see global white supremacy on the rise, we need more tools and skills and to help us regulate. Understanding that also that like as we need the tools to help us regulate, we will not always be in a state of regulation. That is a part of the journey as well. That we will be disoriented. That we and some of that disorientation and some of that frustration becomes an opportunity to channel that into resistance, right? So all of it is a part of our experience. And I appreciate you naming that, your experiences with your own nervous system, because I think that a lot of us hear that and feel very similarly that it is not, sometimes as a wellness people, we when wellness work, they're like, oh, how are you staying centered? I'm like, girl, I'm not staying centered. I'm not centered. I'm just saying, that's not where we're at. So appreciate that. So let's open up the floor. Right now, we're here to talk about AI, this thing called AI. And there are a lot of pressing concerns. I would love to hear from each of you when you're thinking about this intersection of AI, Black communities, and Black mental health, right? Our community's mental health. What are some of the most pressing things that are rising to the top for you right now? And I'll allow anyone who would like to start with this one, because I know it's a big one, to pop into. But what are some of the pressing concerns for you?
I'm happy to start. I'm thinking specifically about something that I just taught in a class of mine. It's called Black Feminist Health Science Studies. And we were talking about what's happening in Memphis around a Tesla data center. And there's a Black community there called Boxtown. And the Black folks who live there have been dealing with the emissions that are coming from this Tesla data center. And for a while, we can think about the physical impact on their health. They're having respiratory issues. People are having um, particular kinds of health issues that are associated with being a long-term smoker, et cetera, even though they're not. So that's one thing. But we never really get to the mental health piece of that for those folks, which is they're living in a city that has not shown up for them, even as they have tried and attempted to make their needs known. And so I'm thinking about that as part of what we have to hold, even as we're, thinking about using these tools in new ways. The impact on people is sometimes talked about as if it's happening abroad, but it's happening, here too. It's happening right in our own neighborhoods, and it's us who are the ones who are most impacted. And not having an outlet for that feels like an important moment for us to take stock of. How do we actually fortify these communities, say that we hear them, and how do they actually get redress? That's one of the things I've been thinking about.
Yes, absolutely brilliant, Dr. Bailey. I appreciate you lifting up the community in Memphis and like naming that like the consequence of these emissions, the consequence of these spaces on the physical self contributes also to the emotional and spiritual self as well, right? That like when we're
Absolutely.
talking about physiological representations, it's also the anxiety of knowing, even if you don't have physiological symptoms, knowing this is in your backyard, knowing that there might be unforeseen circumstances coming down the line can absolutely contribute to a variety of mental health concerns and anxieties, right? And so I appreciate you lifting it up, thinking about how do we not recognize that the mental health intervention needed is a structural mental health intervention, which means a shift of how these institutions are allowed to operate in our communities. I really appreciate that piece. I want to offer it to Dr. Alfie, Dr. Jessica, who would like to share and talk next? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Alfie. You know, I think what's sitting with me when we think about AI and Black mental health specifically is the tension of the way the system has been created for AI, the way the system is developed, that there is tension that, to Dr. Moya's point, there are folks who have been harmed, while at the same time, folks are being helped, right? The same tool that is harming our community has also helped many folks in our community. And I think about it in the sense of um, we talk about AI in generally all of the time, but specifically generative AI has been useful for folks who would not ordinarily have access for a variety of reasons to a provider. And to be clear, everyone doesn't need a provider, but they've been able to have some sort of outlet, right? They've been able to benefit from the way that some of these models have been trained. Not all of them have been trained, well, most of them haven't been trained well in mental health, but it is not for me to say like where someone should be. Like somebody who had a really rough day and did not have somebody they could call was able to sit at the computer and get support that felt validating for them. And there were folks who were harmed in that person's help, right? And I think that's what sits with me is the tension that it's more about how the systems have been created, and really thinking about what are ways that we can, as we think about moving forward, what can we do about things like the data centers and the harm to the community while also not invalidating the many folks, right? And I think people don't realize, and this is just for ChatGPT itself, about 40 million people a day ask ChatGPT a health question. That doesn't count any of the other systems or chatbots. And how many of those are asking mental health questions? I can tell you it's a large percentage. It's several 100,000 folks a week. So it's hard to discount that they're getting help at the same time recognizing that there's a direct hit to our community. And I think I sit with that tension a lot.
Brilliantly said, Dr. Jessica. Like naming that, like this, that because of the lack of healthcare infrastructure in this country, the lack
Mhm.
of access to therapists, to healing support, is that this chat GPT, for better or for worse, has been an accessible point that has helped people in their journey. And that there are other ways in which AI has been assistive in technology for people, for disabled people, for all folks, right? And so, no holding that nuance is saying at the same time, it's also desecrating our environment. So,
Yeah.
how do we hold that and also call ourselves to task as people who are in the mental health and healing justice world about like this is the people wouldn't be turning to these tools in this way if there were actually better infrastructure in this country to support the health and well-being of our folks. Really, really powerful point. Dr. Alfie, what do you have to share for us? I know
I
that's
The thing that comes to me is this idea of empowerment. And as I'm listening to the doctors talk about what some of the issues are, both on the good sides and the bad sides, I always come back to we got to save ourselves as Black people of the diaspora. And what are the ways that we can take power in some of these situations, even if the power is not controlling the outcome, right? That's not always where the power is. Sometimes empowerment is, what is my knowledge base about this thing? And then how do I allow that knowledge base to help me be a better user and help me use the thing and not have the thing use me? So teaching people things like, I don't know how much of a difference it makes. I'm sure my colleagues do, but if you're going to use it, I use Perplexity, but not for a lot. I use Perplexity to rewrite stuff, but they have an incognito function. Theoretically, that function is supposed to prevent the system from using what I put in it to train it. I don't believe that it does, but that's what they tell us, right? So, how do we empower ourselves so that we're not inadvertently feeding a monster, right? So, when I think about communities, my family's from deep South, like deep South Mississippi. Like anybody who's heard of Crush and Run, the gravel, that's where my people come from. That thing just got paved since in my lifetime. It wasn't paved when I was a little girl. So I think about those communities, and they're ripe for some of these companies to go try to put these data centers. How do we empower ourselves? It's not a fix all, but how do we empower ourselves to fight back against that stuff, to get organized? So I think about the ancestors. I'm Gen X. My parents are baby boomers. My grandparents are silent Gen. They had to find, how Black folks used to say, make a way out of no way. They had to figure out how to fight these systems with the tools that they had from a position where people had a 50-yard head, like a 40-yard head start in a 50-yard dash. So we had to figure out how do we, right? And so one of the things that's important to me is, to your point, Yola, we do have accountability. We do have to call ourselves to task, as you said. At the same time, I always want that to be in context, right? So someone in the chat was talking about feeling guilty for using the technology. And I'm like, baby, don't feel guilty. That's why it's there. You don't have to carry that kind of guilt. It's if you need it and it's helping you, then you find a way to use it that works for you, and you don't have guilt about that. Other communities that don't have the number of marginalized identities that we do, they don't feel no guilt. They just use that stuff and it's like, it's here, I'm gonna use it, right? And so I want us to carry that kind of empowerment within ourselves. At the same time, it's important to me that we are empowered in a way that allows us to fight for the changes that are necessary around the detriments or the harms of AI. So how do we help the community that Dr. Bailey mentioned? How do we support that community in getting the resources that they need and feeling wrapped around as they lead and organize that fight? They have some of that through Dr. Bailey, right? But what else can we do to support them and other similar communities? So I think I'm just at an age where, in a stage of my career, where I'm always thinking, I know there's not a fix for everything, but is there one tiny little thing I can do? Because that self-efficacy, that goes a long way. And feeling helpless and feeling like there's nothing you can do and carrying that guilt, that harms us in a lot of ways. And we're in a period of time, to Dr. Jessica's point, where there's so much happening in the world. I want to see us have an opportunity to have some wins. And sometimes your win is, to stay with my little analogy or example, using that technology without feeling guilty about it. That's your win. Because there was a time when it made you feel bad, but maybe something clicks one day and you say, oh, yeah, I need this. I need to use it. Let me go ahead and use it and let me not feel no kind of way about that. So I want us to have that kind of empowerment. And that's what I hope I can support, is other people feeling empowered and supported to fight the battles that they have to fight to help us navigate this new terrain with AI.
Yeah. No, I so appreciate you bringing that in, Dr. Alfie, is that when we talk about our communities who are using AI, how we're using AI, and I'm sure Dr. Jessica and Dr. Moy can talk about that, how Black folks might be using AI and for what purpose, to fill in what gaps that are reflective of other systemic and structural realities we don't have support for, may be very different from how other communities may be using it. And then also it comes to task too, I think Dr. Alfie, you kind of lifted this point too, is like calling these institutions to task. Like we know there are technologies that are evolving that can use not use water the way they're using water in our communities. So how do we push and press and organize and say like, hey, you have opportunities to evolve this technology to not destroy this environment. That is not an option, right? Like, so naming those pieces. Um,
Yola, can
another,
I add something really quick to Dr. Alfie's point? I think that's one of the benefits of the time we're in right now is this is a great time for folks to have some feelings of empowerment and advocacy, getting involved legislatively, right? Because right now there aren't actually a lot of laws and rules to be overturned, right? That's normally the struggle is you're trying to, they don't exist. So they actually need to be created. So it is a rare opportunity to have voice to create something brand new. The reason folks are able to build these things and do what they're able to do right now is because we don't have a lot of regulation in this space. And it's a gift. And I say that because often what we're doing is fighting against a rule, a law, legislation that already happened that's harmful, trying to get it out of the way and get something new. This is a wide open space where you don't have to fight what was there. There's space to create something new so that we can start to set boundaries around like how far does a data center have to be, or what types of communities, what are the criteria, what does a company, if they're going to build something, what are they required to do? And we've done this before in history. Like, I'm gonna date myself a little bit, but even when I was younger, right, when people were building stuff, there used to be laws about if you cut down this many trees, you got to yeah, plant this many trees somewhere else, right? All of that came from folks feeling empowered and doing something. And we're in a space to kind of do that right now with AI tools, the infrastructure, to create some of that and say, this is what we need. And so I think it's really important for folks to be able to use their voice to build up some of that self-efficacy and be able to do something right now.
Come on, Dr. Jessica. Brilliantly said. I saw you come on. Come on in, y'all. I see y'all.
No,
I was gonna say,
I
oh,
love it. I love it. No, go ahead, Dr. Bailey. I love it.
well, I was gonna say something you said too, Dr. Alfie. You talked about ancestors, and there are a lot of us now who are picking up the language of ancestral intelligence, not just artificial intelligence. What does it mean to think about the tools that we have that we've been using that we haven't necessarily acknowledged in that same way or frame? Ruha Benjamin talks about this, AJ Escoffery. Like we have a lot of wisdom and ways of relating. So it's not just that AI is something that's new, is I think there's a way that sometimes there's a progress narrative with some of the things that we're making that makes us forget the things that we know. And so I'm thinking about communal and other opportunities that give people answers that they need. And one of the things I see Beam doing, which is really exciting, is giving people more opportunities to work and gather collectively. What if our AI use wasn't so isolated? What if the way that we were using these tools, was cut down by having a central location where some of this is happening so that it isn't an individual querying that creates this strain and drain on these systems. And also to your point, Dr. Jessica, you're so right that there are these opportunities for us to move in different ways. There's a data center that's supposed to be going up in Chicago, and the call is, or the story is that it's going to not utilize the same kind of water um, cooling system that is so destructive. The question, though, is as we're moving towards these new legislation, who are the regulators? Who are the people who are going to enforce that? So we, as people who are in a neighborhood, in a community, are advocating. It's really going to be on us to see if these companies really do right by the things that they say, by their promises.
And I would just add, it's incumbent upon us to hold them to the task. So as
Absolutely.
we're witnessing what they're doing, to both of your points, our job is to also have somebody in the game or somebodies who are asking the questions regularly, who are following up, and who are holding these folks accountable. I saw somebody in the chat say making them pay for, the utility, whatever they're using, extracting, to your point, Dr. Jessica, whatever they're extracting, you have to put back. And I remember, I thought you were going to say, Dr. Jessica, that when you were building something, this is what my parents taught me, and it was eye-opening for me. Whenever they're going to do construction, most counties have something where they have to have an open period where you can come in and look at the map, the blueprints for what is it that they're planning to develop. And then they have public hearings. We're going through that now in my neighborhood. The hospital wants to expand and they advertise everywhere. Go to the meetings. Like my community is the community I live in was literally built for Black people specifically at the end of slavery to keep them all in one place. And there used to be a big wall around the community because they didn't want the Black folks to come out. That's the community historically that we live in now. But the thing about that is, whenever we have some big thing coming up, them older Black folks, they got a whole little like phone tree. They don't do email too much. They got a little phone tree going, texting and whatnot. And they say, somebody who going to represent us? Somebody needs to go. And they use that to fight for historical preservation title or designation for one of the first Black firefighter units that, is like almost 100 years old or something like that. But they got organized. So everybody doesn't have to go to the meeting, but somebody got to go to speak for the rest of us. And I feel like those are the kinds of, when you speak of ancestral wisdom, that's the ancestral intelligence. That's the kind of intelligence that they had. Everybody can't go. We all got a role to play, but somebody can go. And we're going to give you all our information, and we want you to carry that water and tell them people about themselves so they don't do us like they normally do us. And it just feels like there's an opportunity for us to build that kind of organizing into this specific topic. And it's exciting to me to think about how powerful as a people we are whenever we're organized. We have so many examples of that throughout history, but also recently in the last couple of years, we have those examples. So I love that what you all are talking about in terms of there are things that we can do. And I want to see us do them. And you all have given me a little bit of energy around I need to be a person to find out what's happening in this space, to try to do a little bit that I can, not to take on too much, but what little part can I contribute to? So I appreciate the conversation very much.
Absolutely. I'm loving this too. And I also appreciate the call to action because what I'm hearing from all of you is that it's about one, there is this wide open space where regulation needs to be put in place. How do we step into that space, move into that space to build regulation for these entities and say, like, this is the boundary and the limitation of how you will be able to operate? How do we advocate for better systems that don't use the amount of water they use, right? Not being like, how do we advocate for, like, you can't, like you said, cut so many trees down here without planting something different? Like, how do we hold that line? And also the AI, the ancestral intelligence, that we've been doing this. We ain't new to this. We true to this. That we have a history and legacy of Black folks, of Black women, of Black queer and trans folks, of Black disabled fighting to the teeth and winning through regulation, and policies and practices. And so I think that's a really great call. And there's many organizations, I know that Movement for Black Lives has been doing stuff around AI. I know other entities really getting people mobilized and say, like, let's get in the streets and the city council to make some shifts. Now, I want to shift a little bit to this conversation around public health systems. And I know Dr. Elfie and Dr. Jackson particularly, Dr. Elfie and Dr. Jackson, I know this is a piece you all are engaging in a certain dimension. When we talk about AI in the hands of public health systems, there are a lot of questions that have been risen from advocates around security and trust for Black and Indigenous folks accessing mental health services, where we already know that, unfortunately, in most of the United States, the carceral systems are deeply connected to the mental health systems, and that many of our folks are very aware of that and already ambivalent and fearful towards getting care. So, what are some of the implications we need to start thinking about, and in that same spirit of advocacy, advocating for? As we move towards this moment.
Yeah, I think, and I apologize if you can hear noise, y'all. The people showed up to cut the lawn right as we got started. So I keep
We don't hear
going
anything.
because I'm like, okay,
I don't hear
perfect.
anything.
I was like, because I can hear it. And I'm like, oh, really, y'all? I think I'm gonna push the envelope a little bit here about the public health. Because I think as a typical therapist, I'm gonna say two things can be true at the same time. Um, we have a right, and we should question about how our data is used, especially mental health data, because again, the lack of regulation. And I will bang that drum until I can't anymore, that there's a lot of rules, even HIPAA. Everyone cites HIPAA. And I was like, HIPAA did not have AI in mind. Like it didn't even know. So it doesn't really fully address things. Like we really, really don't have a lot of regulation and policies yet, right? There are folks who are trying to do things in different states. So public health systems, most of them are already starting to implement this. And I think folks need to, and I also want to back up and be clear, because I think it is important. It is very difficult for us to critique and change things that we don't know and understand. And that doesn't mean a deep understanding, but it means that we know what it is, right? A lot of folks are just like, I'm gonna stay with it, I'm not gonna mess with it. Well, then it's hard to come in and say, this is what needs to be fixed, right? So I'm going to be really specific that I'm talking about generative AI, because AI, artificial intelligence itself in healthcare has actually been around for decades. There are thousands of radiology instruments and things that are being used in public health systems right now that we were not pushing against. It was generative AI that came and changed things. But related to mental health in these systems, um, the piece I'm pushing back on is the foundational systems, the foundational models that public health systems are using don't have us in mind necessarily, but a part of that is because we haven't engaged for right reason. We have a lot of history about how we have been treated in healthcare and how our information has been exploited. That also means when folks are using systems, they also still don't have our data to build the systems. There's a part of it where we have to think about how can we create trust? How can we work in communities that we can give data that can be used to build these systems in public health care? Because many of you, whether you know it or not, I encourage you the next time you go to your PCP, they're using an ambient scribe in your public health system right now. If you go to a public hospital, a public clinic, especially clinics that are low cost when they're trying to say we don't have enough folks and they're using that. But again, the data that was used to build it doesn't always include us because we haven't engaged. And it is a tension. If you can hear, I sit with a lot of tensions. It's like, how do we help create an environment that feels comfortable enough? I don't even always use the word safe because I can't guarantee safety when I'm not in control. But how do we create it comfortable enough to be able to give it data so that things are normed on us, that they are built based on data that we have?
Mhm. That's a brilliant response. And I appreciate you also making that distinction, which I see people in the chat also applauding this generative AI and talking about AI has been in healthcare for a long time. Here we're talking about a specific subgenre of that work. And I also want to like offer this piece too. Like I appreciate you naming that we haven't shown up. And then I think there's another piece of that we haven't been asked to show up
Period.
sometimes, right? That
That
we
part.
haven't been called to the table and
That part.
sometimes explicitly not allowed
Excluded.
excluded, excuse me.
Correct.
Like, so I think that like the holding those pieces is important. I love Dr. Jessica, like you offering, saying like, how do we engage thoughtfully? How do we engage if we already know these things are happening? How do we engage them through that piece to make sure our information and models are representing us? Other things coming up for you. Dr. Alfia, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I think part of what I struggle with is having been in the field as long as I have, we're not there. And there are some very clear reasons why we're not there. Dr. Jessica and I had these conversations a lot when she was basically a postdoc for me years ago. And part of it is it's not only been, we haven't been invited, it's been hostile, right? Trying to get in, it is openly and actively and deliberately hostile. So when you're trying to have conversations about how do we include more of this information, now remember, I'm coming at this from somebody who started in the 90s. It has changed drastically, but I can still use my eyeballs and see it ain't changed that much because I still don't see a preponderance of us in leadership positions making these decisions and opening the doors to invite. It's not that we're there and not inviting, it's that it's not enough of us. And so when you look at senior leadership on these national boards, these national committees, these advisory groups that are setting standards, Dr. Jessica, I would argue, is kind of a lone wolf. I don't see no whole bunch of us at them meetings and at them tables. And so my thing is, how do you even tell folks that you need to, I used to have this analogy. It's like at the old school, remember your grandparents. I know for some of us, it's grandparents. It was my parents. The table in the dining room where you spread the table out and drop the other piece in, and then the whole table makes the table bigger, elongate the table so you can get more people. That's what we have to have. And I feel like we can do everything that Dr. Jessica says if we have people in the room to slide that table open, drop another leaf in, and invite more people to come sit at the table in decision-making positions. And it can never be just one of us. We can't be a lone voice. You get drowned out. And these people are expert at marginalizing. That's why we call it marginalized identities, because these folks are expert. And so what I want is, I feel like a both and. There's a way for us to acknowledge that these challenges exist, and I want us to be in a position to support people who want to be at those tables, or to look back like everybody on this call does and say, let me grab this person, let me grab that person. You come on up in here, you know this stuff. I think I might have been the person that recommended Dr. Jessica among many others, I'm sure. But every time somebody says something about tech, I'm like, call her. That ain't my lane. Do you know what I'm saying? And so it's, how do we do that? How do we have more Dr. Jessicas, right? That we can bring and we can point people to. And so the last thing I'll say is this: whenever I'm at a table, I don't think anybody who knows me would not believe me when I say this. I am always, who ain't at this table? And why y'all don't know nobody? I got a list. I say it once a week. I got a list, everybody under the sun, every color, every identity you can think. I got somebody. Them people need to be at the table. And I want us to be in a position where we acknowledge that we're not at the table and we're not always able to contribute. And we acknowledge that there are systems that are actively set on making sure that we don't get to the table and we don't have anything to contribute. And so we're fighting multiple battles on multiple fronts at the same time, just like the ancestors. They did too. I acknowledge that, but I want to see us have a way of figuring out who can we place strategically in these places so they're not alone and so they can be a voice for the rest of us.
I appreciate that piece. I mean, it's given very much so the activism of like, we're gonna send you with a casserole to the Capitol, and we're gonna make sure you good go on and hold it down the table, right?
Look, you got the little towel over top of it to keep it nice, right? But we sending you with this casserole to the Capitol. You the one that got to go. Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah. Can I give a quick example for a question that was in the chat? And I think
I was just going to bring the chat in. Yeah, come on in, please.
I was going to say, I think because Dr. Bailey was talking about this a little bit, and I think it's important when we're talking about community. A part of community is also recognizing that sometimes something that does not, and I'm not saying something harmful, so I want to be clear, but something that doesn't always feel good for me can still be useful for somebody else. Being in community is recognizing that just because I don't enjoy it or like it doesn't mean it isn't a big help to someone else. And I think when we're talking about our data, trust is required. And I'm not saying that every organization has earned our trust, but think about it like this, and I'll just give a really brief example. For something like schizophrenia or schizoaffective bipolar disorder, those are really hard to diagnose because you have to see someone over time. You can't just have one appointment and see someone. Folks are building things right now, leveraging AI and biomarkers that could help people get diagnosed faster, find out which is the right medication for them, and get them into treatment quicker, which helps their recovery faster. However, when we don't have data from our community as a part of that, they're going to norm it on the data that they have. So I think when we have data from our community, it does help folks to do that. As someone who has done it, I'm saying it is very useful when I'm saying these are the symptoms that look like in our community. But when I don't have that data, because we have not been able to participate, we haven't been invited, or we're saying that our data should not be a part of it, it can harm other folks because then I don't have what I need to help make a diagnosis. And so I think it is important to be thoughtful and intentional. We don't need to give all of our data, but being mindful, we can't ask folks to build things to help us if they don't have what they need to be able to help us as well.
I think there's another part of it though. And this is just an addition. Who are you giving it to? So the data can be, I want the data to go to people who I know going to protect it. So I think about, I'm not going to say her name right. Her name's Dr. Joy, the Algorithmic Justice League. I want her to have my data. So if I'm giving it to her because she's the person I trust. She's just one example who's going to do right by my data. And I want her to be the person to then funnel, and people like her, they should be the people that funnel that data to these other folks. What I worry about is we do need our data, but I think this is similar to clinical trials. Don't talk about, we have such a hard time recruiting people for clinical trials. You don't treat them right. So you don't want them right. And so what you need to do is be giving these Black folks some money to run these clinical trials. Then we'll be in the clinical trial because them is folks we trust. For example, the Jackson Heart Study, the biggest study on cardiovascular health and disease in the nation. He Black. I think he was University of Michigan. He got a whole team in Jackson. My spouse is from that area, right? Y'all can track me because I know you're going to do right by my data. Or he's deceased, but Dr. James Jackson, he was at Michigan, who did one of the initial and biggest studies of Black mental health. I think it was the National Survey of American Life. I'm going back. So when them people had the data, we good. My worry is like a lot of folks, who is getting this data and what are they using it for? That's my worry because so often they use it to reinforce stereotypes. So it's not that we shouldn't. I agree with you, Dr. Jessica. It is who are we giving this data to and who has control of it? That I want to know that you are working in consort with somebody I feel like is trustworthy around my data. And I don't want you to have it if what you're going to use it for is to reinforce stereotypes about who got schizophrenia and who don't. I'm going to say this. There's enough stuff out there. Them people know who got it and who don't. And they know what it look like across different populations. They don't care because it's not important to them. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, Doctor, we got a lot on the table, a lot in the chat, a lot of, and all the nuances of the realities of it, right? Like this is very complicated, and I
It
really
is.
appreciate your brilliant minds to really help us hold, like, hey, it's not black and white. It's a lot of gray in between here, right? Dr. Moya Bailey, I'd love to hear you bring your voice to the space. I know we've been talking a lot about this kind of advocacy arm, which is really what we're going to. I'm thinking about AI as a way to like support the environment, to support like like organizing efforts. Like, is that on the table? Is that something that we could talk about?
Great question. I'm really interested in how Black people do data differently. Dr. Alfie's comments in this bit of conversation has me thinking about what we do with data that doesn't look like what other people do with data. There's a person in the Black Feminist Health Science Collective named Nicole Charles, and she wrote a book called Suspicion. And she was looking at how Black people are maybe suspicious of vaccination, but not necessarily not going to get vaccinated. And she was looking at Black parents in Barbados who had suspicions about this HPV vaccine that was being rolled out to primarily Black girls, but it was through the Gates Foundation. And so they were rolling it out in a way that was not like they had rolled out other vaccines. So the parents were saying, well, wait, we're not saying we don't want this for our kids, but we're asking why is this moving in ways that don't match the way that things have rolled out in our community before? So for me, it's about that piece of us that is not resistant, not against our material, our data, our interests being used, but having questions about what makes this different? Why are we being treated in a way that isn't in alignment with some of these other ways that we've seen? And also to Dr. Alfie's point, not with community leaders that we know and respect. Who are the people who are going to give us the access and make us feel like this is a safe space for us to be going? So when I think about AI more generally, I'm really interested in the people who are most impacted by the use of AI, particularly those who are part of the system of AI that we don't see. So the people in Kenya who are doing the cleanup of a lot of this data. One thing that we don't talk about a lot is for all of the data that goes into AI, there are people primarily in Kenya who are looking at all of these images, all of this data, and they're seeing lots of things, and they're not getting support for what it is that they're seeing. And they're culling and taking out a lot of the things that we would find objectionable, um, things that are really harmful, but they're not getting support for that. So when we think about this as a global system, when we're thinking about care and we're thinking about, who benefits and who doesn't, unfortunately, it does end up being marginalized folks who are still not being cared for, people who are being marginalized on a global scale. So I'm really interested in the possibility of what comes when we make the tech, when we do some of the work, what are we creating that actually maybe shifts focus? So another person like Dr. Joy that was mentioned earlier is Timnit Gebru, who has a project called DARE, and they're really working with people who are in these spaces who are doing this work of actually cleaning the data and asking them what it is that they need to support their mental health as they're doing this work. What kind of things actually support us in creating a tool that isn't harming the people who are making it accessible for folks in the first world. So I become really curious about the interconnectedness, like the nuances that people have been talking about. Are there ways that we can put these conversations together so that we're thinking about people at all of these different layers?
Whew, y'all, we don't went into the things. I'm just really looking at the clock. I'm looking at the time. I'm like, it is 1:56. Y'all don't took the church house to the corner. Like y'all don't like we don't, we don't went. There's a lot to be said here and so many gems. I want to give a minute or so for people in the chat. If you have some questions, if you want to put them in the chat. I see a lot of things have been coming up in the chat, a lot of amens, a lot of like yes, a lot of questions. I see a question from Deshae Jackson saying, how do we get our people to these tables, Dr. Alfie? And I think that like you lifted up that kind of model of, look, we're going to find where you need to go and get you in there. But sometimes it's a question about how do we build our own tables? You know, I'm already thinking about, okay, I said, so basically we're gonna get Dr. Jessica, we're gonna create an organization and give Dr. Jessica some coins. So Dr. Jessica go build that. You know, like that's
Yeah.
what we have to be thinking about, right? Who are the
Yes.
people we trust? How do we get
Yes.
them the resources and stand behind them to advocate for our folks, you know? So any
100%.
questions we have on the Q&A for
And one of
folks?
one of the questions about getting folks to the tables, I'll just share a few other names of folks in the mental health space who are at the table. So I agree that we have to be mindful who we trust and sharing that there are folks who are doing the good work. Unfortunately, it doesn't always look sexy, right? Like the stuff behind. So they're not on social media. They're not promoting this. But I think looking up Dr. Allison Cerezo's work, she's done work where they've even laid out an outline of how folks can be thinking about culture from the very beginning of data when they're building foundational models. Dr. Amber Jolly Page is a Black woman counselor. She's also leading clinical for a team where they are looking again at how they're building AI models for clinical trials and mental health. So two folks have done research and written kind of almost guides for folks to be thinking about how do we start to trust or ways we can trust where some of the data goes.
I love these names. We got one question. What are some ethical policies or procedures around AI use that a nonprofit could adopt? That's a big question, but that's a question we have. And then I see also someone asked about Black feminist sciences, and Dr. Bailey put the link there so you can learn more about that there. But anybody want to briefly kind of touch on that piece? I know that's a hard question to address in a minute or so, but anything top of mind?
One thing that's top of mind is something I suggested before. If people want to pool their AI questions or have one time in which they're using it, I feel like that draws less resource. If that's a collective decision and practice as opposed to individual folks using AI, that creates a little bit less strain. And also having a policy about when and where you want to use AI. What are the issues that you feel like you can't answer without ChatGPT? And I'll say this when we're talking about, I thank you, Dr. Jessica, for reminding us about the difference between AI and generative AI. The thing about the generative is that it can make people feel like there's one answer because ChatGPT will come back and give you a specific response, but there's more answers out there. And so I want us to have opportunities to think through the multiple ways that we can answer some of these questions that we're asking it.
Absolutely. Y'all, powerful, 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 powerful conversation. We could go for hours talking about this. For those who are in the chat, you will receive the recording so you can watch this again. And I will also gather some data from Dr. Bailey and Dr. Jessica and Dr. Alfie to make sure we have a list of things that you can follow up and support. We also going to start a casserole list so you can send Dr. Jessica a casserole while we send her to the Capitol, and we're gonna get a nice little Rolls Royce. So we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure it out. We're gonna figure it out. But we need to make sure that our folks are being supported in this work. This has been a really powerful conversation. We know we weren't going to find any absolute answers, but you all shared a lot of rich and important data. I want to know if you have any closing thoughts you would like to offer to our audience as we begin to move on in our world. Who to talk to, what to read, what's some thoughts you want to offer? Want to give it to? I'm gonna start with Dr. Alfie first.
I don't really have a lot to say. One of the things I talk about in my book is I want everybody to remember that you are a gift, that you are uniquely talented and that we need your talents. And so any way you can find to get your talents out there in the world to help us as a collective and to support yourself, I just really want to see people do that.
Ashe. Thank you, Dr. Alfie. Dr. Bailey.
Uh, Southerners on New Ground is going to have a conversation about data centers and political education. That call is coming up. I'll put it in the chat. And also, if you are somebody who teaches or is thinking about using AI, on my website, Digital Apothecary, we have an AI statement that we use and an AI manifestation where we talk about what we really hope when people interact with AI.
I love it. Bringing in the new world. I love it so much. Dr. Jessica, take us home. What is the word you're leaving us with today?
Yeah, I'll share one more resource, responsible AI use. It's Dr. Kay Nikatarova and Chris Hempel who are talking about ways that we can responsibly and ethically use AI in our daily lives. And just encourage folks that we can sit in the discomfort and move forward. So we can have questions and not have answers about any of this AI use and still say, a day-to-day decision. I might use it today, I might not tomorrow. Like there is no end all be all. I have to keep it away from me. That we can be uncomfortable and still say, but how can I make this better and make those decisions day by day?
Ashe, a lovely place to end on. Thank you so much to our esteemed panelists for spending time out of your day, dedicating to pouring into us and offering your wisdom and insight. And thank you to your ancestors for cultivating the lineage of brilliance that made you both all possible. Thank you to all of our guests who joined us for the webinar. We will have many more conversations. I see people asking for a part two. Maybe we'll see if we can get them back to do that because there's a lot more to discuss here. We will follow up with a recording, some resources. We're sending you much love and joy on your journey during this time, and remembering our communities have the power to heal. Our communities have the power to resist, to reimagine, and that we can take generative AI and many of these situations and scenarios as we need to transform them into something that works for our folks. We have a legacy of doing it, and it will not stop. Appreciate y'all. That concludes our time. Thank you so much for joining us. Bye, everyone. Thank you.